Welcome back to the Chammy, my channel on YouTube. You're going to get a mostly professional tarot card reading from a haunted house.
U.S. government officials specifically, I don't have anything to announce at this time. We're continuing to assess the situation and consider when it might be appropriate for us to send personnel into Syria.
I was hoping it was going to be Miller time, but it seems like Matthew Miller is in the Middle East.
Concentrated presence in the
or maybe
Northeast.
Russia trying to deal with some stuff that's going on.
Building your custom home is now
God,
easier than ever.
commercial.
And with America's Home Place, we can show you how. During our 50 years as a customer
cease and desist.
Side,
U.S. officials are there, right?
In any corner of the world, we of course take the safety and security of our diplomats doing just about anything that is tantamount to us. I certainly appreciate the point that you may be trying to make as it relates to government official travel into Syria. I just don't have anything to announce.
I'm going to Gaza and the Palestinian issue, if you allow me.
Yeah.
Yesterday or this morning, I think the Secretary of State said that it's, he keeps saying this, that the Hamas should realize that the cavalry is not coming to save them. Is he basically saying that Hamas ought to surrender? Is he basically saying Hamas ought to surrender?
Well, Saeed, when you look at the trajectory of this conflict and the things that we have we've been working so tirelessly on. Of course, what is required here for this conflict to end is an agreement between two parties, of course, Israel and Hamas. And we have seen time and time again Hamas's unwillingness to engage in good faith, its unwillingness to accept deals that have been on the table. Of course, now, it is always going to be incumbent on both of these parties, Israel and Hamas, to come to an agreement. And what we're working on intensely is to bring a ceasefire to the finish line so that ultimately Palestinians and Israelis can live securely. And perhaps most importantly, the remaining hostages, including the Americans, can be returned home. We think a deal is possible. I don't have anything new to announce, but are hopeful that parties can come to an agreement soon.
Okay, but the language of the Secretary of State on this issue, it seems like he's saying that what Hamas was suing for, which is a broader war, it did not happen and will not happen. So now there are new terms. That's what you're saying, that what we have had back in May, on May 31, when the President of the United States said, I have a suggestion, this suggestion is an Israeli, this is no longer on the table, correct?
I can't opine on what Hamas's thinking or strategy is, Said.
More on your thinking, not Hamas's.
Our thinking is that we think a deal is possible, and we're working intensely to bring that ceasefire across a finish line. But absolutely, the Secretary is correct, and I would echo what he had said. Hamas, and through malign actors like Iran, it was very clear that perhaps a possible end goal here was a broader regional conflict. Out of much great work on behalf of the United States and its allies and partners, that has largely been avoided. And that is what the Secretary was alluding to.
Let me, a couple of other questions, if you and my colleagues indulge me. I wanted to ask you about a report in Haus, where it was reported that they really have a kill zone. And it doesn't matter, children or not children, whatever it is, they kill. I wonder if you saw such a report and if you have any comment on it.
I've not seen that specific reporting site, so I'm not sure what you're referring to specifically.
It's a report in Haus about the Nitzarine crossing, and they basically have established a kill zone, and anyone that comes close to that kill zone is shot dead. There are kids, time and time again, that were shot. If this is the case, is this a war crime? So,
Said, I'm just not familiar with this policy, and we have stressed again that for Israel, every civilian casualty is a tragedy, and that they not only need to comply with IHL, they need to take every possible step to prevent civilian harm. Broadly, though, we of course support Israel's right to defend itself, but as it relates to this, I will defer to the IDF to speak to any operational adjustments they may or may not be making in the region. I'm just not familiar with this.
Okay, and finally, I want to ask you about aid. It seems that 1/3 of the aid required has entered Gaza since the beginning of December. You have any comment on that? Because I know that you guys were, pushing for more aid. There was that famous letter and so on. So where are we with aid now?
these are conversations we continue to have with counterparts in the region, including with our Israeli partners. We're stressing that every possible measure needs to be taken to open more border crossings, do everything we can to open more commercial corridors, and really take additional steps to bolster the humanitarian flow into Gaza. I believe it was a number of weeks ago, I talked about some of the steps that have been taken by the IDF and COGAD and others to help be on the right track. We continue to think that is the case, but this is there is no silver bullet here, and we're going to continue to pursue this at all angles. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Just Human Rights Watch.
Yeah.
I know you commented on Amnesty released a report, but Human Rights Watch released a report accusing Israel of genocide. I believe also today, Doctors Without Borders had a report that's accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing. I'm not in suspense about what your response is going to be, but what does the U.S. feel about this? Do you think that there's something to it, something worth checking out? How do you feel about it?
So first, you know, why don't we break those into two questions, Sean? First, I will defer to Doctors Without Borders to speak to the details of their report. What I can say is that even within their report, they make pretty clear that they don't have the legal authority to determine intentionality. And I certainly don't have an assessment from the US government to offer today as it relates to ethnic cleansing. But, you know, we continue to appreciate the important role that's played by civil society organizations, including Doctors Without Borders. And we're deeply concerned about the scale of civilian harm in this conflict. And we're continuing to emphasize that the parties need to comply with IHL. But most importantly, it is because of the circumstances and the crises that we're seeing that we are working so tirelessly on an agreement to stop the war and bring all the hostages home and ultimately improve the humanitarian situation and get us on a path to an enduring resolution to the conflict in Gaza. That's what we are squarely focused on. On Human Rights Watch, separately, it should come as no surprise that we disagree with the conclusions in this particular report. Certainly appreciate the role that groups like Human Rights Watch have played over the course of this conflict, but also other conflicts around the world. We disagree with the conclusions, and we have not concurred with past findings regarding genocide, and we do not now, and we do not believe that term applies here. Now, if you all remember, when it came to the National Security Memorandum Report, NSM 20, as some of you like to call it, we previously had said that it's reasonable to assess that the IDF in certain instances didn't meet its IHL obligations. But on something like genocide, that is just a conclusion that we disagree with. We've disagreed it when other entities have come to this conclusion and do so here. But ultimately, again, I'll stress the same point that I said in the context of Doctors Without Borders, is that we're continuing to work towards an agreement to stop the war, bring all the hostages home, and put it on a path to a resolution to the conflict in Gaza.
Just briefly,
Yeah.
one thing specifically Human Rights Watch is saying to base this on is water access, saying that, I don't have it in front of me, but that a large number of civilians likely died because of lack of water access, and what they're saying is Israeli actions causing that. What's your assessment of that? I mean, is that a reason to... is that an equally concerning finding, and why does the U.S. not think?
So certainly we need to be doing everything we can to ensure that water access is strong and that everybody who needs water in Gaza is able to get it. That is something that we have stressed when we've talked about the influx of humanitarian aid, of the need for products like water and food and shelter and medicines. But again, specifically, when it comes to a determination of something like genocide, the legal standard is just incredibly high. And so the finding in this scenario, we just disagree with. That does not take away from the fact that there is a dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And it doesn't take away from the fact that, of course, there are so many in Gaza who are struggling from water scarcity. And these are the kinds of things that we're continuing to press with partners in the region, including with Israel.
This report is not a lone thing. It did not come out of the blue sky. I mean, 2 weeks ago, there was the Amnesty International report saying exactly the same thing. It's genocide. Other organizations said the same thing. So you will continue to dismiss this, but the facts on the ground Acts of genocide.
Side organizations not affiliated with the U.S. government have the right to draw any conclusion based on their analyses that they want to, and they can. And we certainly welcome the work that they do. But on the perspective of the U.S. government, we'll stress again, as I did stress in the scenario of Amnesty International, that this is not a conclusion that we agree with. Jenny, go ahead.
How is the U.S. government making these conclusions, given you have no one on the ground in Gaza?
Jenny, the point that I'm making is a broad one, that the legal standard for genocide is incredibly incredibly large. But you've also heard us say previously, and I just spoke about that in NSM 20, we made the conclusion that it was reasonable to assess that the IDF in certain instances didn't meet its IHL violations. But in the context of genocide, we just disagree with this conclusion. Our belief is that this is a legal standard that is incredibly high, and we get into conversations about things like intentionality or not. And our assessment is that that's just not been the case in this scenario.
Other than the NSM 20 conclusion, have there been any other scenarios or incidents that you've been investigating that you've come to a final conclusion on that this was a human rights violation, for example?
We've spent a lot of time up here, Jenny, talking about the deliberative processes that we have.
Has that deliberative process ended in any of the incidents you've been investigating?
These are processes that are ongoing, and I don't have any other conclusions to share today.
And then my last question related to this, there is another Foreign Service officer who resigned. He said over inaction over Gaza, the fact that he said that his findings and reports to the department were largely ignored. Do you have any response?
So I'm not familiar with the specific circumstance. I will just say that, someone's decision to work here or not, or stay employed, that's ultimately a very personal decision. I will say that from the president on down and the secretary, we welcome and encourage differing points of view, dissenting points of view. We think that the end product is, again, better public policy. This is nothing that you haven't heard me say before. And I will say that when it comes to our policy as it relates to the Middle East, particularly our policy as it relates to the conflict in Gaza, this is something that we continue to be incredibly deliberative about, and we welcome varying points of view on what our aim is. But at the end of the day, I will just say again is that we are working tirelessly to do everything we can to get the ceasefire proposal across the finish line and stop the war and bring all the remaining hostages home.
So
Sorry.
I'll get out of my
Well, the question was about, and maybe this was to be directed to Jen, this is about the guy who resigned in July, 5 months, more than almost 6 months ago.
Was there a question?
Well, no, I just want to make sure I understood who it was.
Got it. Jenny, go ahead.
Two questions on South Korea, Russia, and North Korea. Deputy Secretary Campbell said he would hold high-level face-to-face diplomacy with South Korea's acting president, Han Duck-soo, within weeks. In South Korea, the top diplomacy and the security officers are currently suspended their work and arrested. The South Korean opposition party's impeachment bill includes a diplomatic assessment. My question is it possible for South Korea and the United States have normal diplomacy in this situation? And do you think a diplomatic evaluation can be grounds for impeachment?
So let me just make two broad points first, Jenny, that I want to be very clear about. First is that we strongly support the Ironclad Alliance that joins our two countries together, and that's done so much over the last few years, especially under the Biden administration. In recent years, the alliance has made enormous strides, and the United States looks forward to partnering with the ROK, achieving further progress. But if you recall, on the Secretary's trip, he said the most important thing as it relates to the current issues ongoing in South Korea is that the Republic of Korea has demonstrated its democratic resilience. And that's something we strongly support, and we strongly support the Korean people throughout this process. We've seen what's happening. We've seen it follow peacefully a process that is clearly laid out in the ROK Constitution, and we're continue to be ready to work with acting President Han and the ROK government. And we'll look forward to sharing engagements in the future should any get scheduled.
Second question now. President Putin has been called to the International Criminal Court as a war criminal who started the war in Ukraine. And should North Korea's Kim Jong-un, who is helping Putin in the war, also be referred to the International Criminal Court?
I don't have a legal determination or an assessment to offer on that, Jenny. What I can say is that the DPRK continues to be a regime that represses human rights, and not only that, is a volatile regime that has contributed to much of the destability that we're seeing, not just in the region, but also encroaching in other areas like Europe as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, go. Yeah, of course.
Just briefly, South Korea said yesterday that it estimates that at least 100 North Koreans have died so far fighting on behalf of the Russians. Does the U.S. have any assessment?
So thanks, Sean. Our assessment is that there have been several hundred casualties of DPRK soldiers in Ukraine. That's what we're seeing, but I'm not in a place to parse it more specifically for you than that.
Casualties, of course, as journalists know, it could mean like wounded or killed. Are you specifically North Korean?
Correct. Yes, okay. That is correct.
And just briefly, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield yesterday was suggesting that Russia might formally conclude that accept North Korea as a nuclear weapons state. Is that something that you're tracking? Is that something that you think that if it could be imminent? Is that something that you're? Well,
I don't have a timeline to prognosticate on, Sean, but should that come to fruition, should the Russian Federation make that declaration, it of course would be what we would view as another step in a long line of examples of the closening of relationships between these two countries, and it would be of great concern to us. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Casualties all from Kursk operation?
I don't have it. I'm not in a place to parse it more specifically than that.
Thank you. I want to echo everything my colleagues said. Can't thank you enough for being always accessible, available, professional. I have so many adjectives to after.
Thanks, Alex.
Depending on how you answer my questions on Georgia, let's unpack a little bit the sanctions that you guys have announced.
Sure.
So you have sanctioned 2 more violators with Magnitsky sanctions, and on top of that, the state, according to a press release, is taking further steps to impose visa restrictions on additional Georgian individuals and members. Can you put some figure value how many violators in total today got impacted?
Sure. Alex, to give some additional color for the room on this, today the Department of Treasury's OFAC imposed sanctions on Georgia's Minister of Internal Affairs and Georgia's deputy head of the ministry's special task department. These are leaders who have been involved in the brutal crackdowns on members of the media and peaceful protesters, including during demonstrations throughout 2024. The Department of State also announced that it took steps to impose additional visa restrictions on individuals responsible for or complicit in undermining democracy in Georgia and their immediate family members. Alex, these actions follow the visa actions that we announced last week, and ultimately, this is something the United States strongly condemns Georgian Dream's ongoing brutal violence against Georgian citizens, Georgian protesters, and members of the media, human rights activists, and opposition figures. Our view is that the Georgian Dream Party has turned away from Georgia's Euro-Atlantic future, which the Georgian people overwhelmingly desire and the Georgian Constitution envisions. We remain committed to promoting accountability for those complicit in human rights abuses and undermining democracy in Georgia.
And in terms of the numbers, so on top of 100 violators that you have sanctioned, until last week, how many new names have been added to the State Departments.
So I just spoke about those two ministers at the top of answering your question.
But on top of that,
I will see if there's a more technical breakdown for you, Alex, but I think I've parsed it as much as I'm able to.
and what kind of message do you send it to Ivanishvili by letting him off the hook one more time?
Look, Alex, as you've heard us say before, taking one designation or taking a particular action one day doesn't certainly designate us doing something else in the future. This is just the latest example of the United States using the tools at its disposal to hold perpetrators in Georgia accountable. And we, of course, continue to have these various tools at our disposal.
That means it's not the end of your comprehensive review.
I'm just not going to preview potential actions.
And one more on this, is it fair to say that this is a reflection of bipartisan will? President-elect Trump met with President Zelensky a couple of weeks ago, and we've heard different things.
I'm just not gonna. I will let the incoming administration speak to its own foreign policy. What I can say is that this is a priority for us based on our values. Rabia, go ahead. Yeah.
I also want to thank you for your
Of course.
professionalism, echoing my colleagues. I have a question on Syria, if I may.
Sure.
Evidence of war crimes in Syria, including, mass graves and evidence of torture at prisons, continues to emerge. I was wondering what is the U.S. position on investigating these crimes committed by the Assad regime, and are there any actions the U.S. is planning to take regarding accountability? And
how you feeling today?
So the Assad regime, let's be very clear, the Assad regime brutalized, detained, disappeared, tortured, and killed hundreds of thousands of people in Syria. And now at long last, the Assad regime has fallen. That is a fundamental act of justice. It is a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. And what we are focused on is looking to work with our partners, with the stakeholders in Syria, with the Syrian people, to seize this opportunity and manage that risk. And going forward, what we're going to do is engage with all communities in Syria to establish an inclusive transition away from the Assad regime toward an independent, sovereign Syria that respects human rights, takes all precautions to protect civilians, and upholds international humanitarian law. We want to establish an infrastructure to support Syria's neighbors, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, and Israel, should any threats arise from Syria during that period and transition. And we want to maintain our mission against ISIS and protect our forces against any threats, maintaining security of detention facilities, displaced persons camp, etc.
But on the accountability on these, war crimes, do you support any, international or independent investigation into Assad regime's war crimes, potentially maybe referring him on, or the regime officials to the ICC?
So, Rabia, in practicality, I'm just unsure how that would ultimately work, given that Mr. Assad is not in the country. And ultimately, that is something that is for the future governance of Syria and the representatives of the Syrian people to determine. Make no mistake, the Assad regime is one that brutalized, detained, and killed hundreds of thousands of people in Syria, and something that we think is incredibly serious and concerning. But the Assad regime has fallen, and that in itself is an act of fundamental justice. We are now focused on doing everything we can to engage with stakeholders in Syria, first and foremost, the Syrian people, to chart a new path forward.
Do you plan to, engage or cooperate with the new government in Damascus to identify these, war criminals?
We are engaging on a variety of areas. Jen, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, you have no idea how much I'm going to miss you. Because, whenever I ask question about Southern Central Asia, that's my topic. We have always a lot of words making headlines in India, Pakistan. So thank you so much for
here to help.
Question. Thank you. So with that, the Pakistani government has criticized the United States for imposing new sanctions against country's long-range ballistic missile program, labeling the move as double standards. How would you respond to this?
So let's take a step back. The U.S. is committed to maintaining the global non-proliferation regime, and Pakistan is an important partner in that. However, we have been clear and consistent about our concerns with Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile program. It is longstanding U.S. policy to deny support to Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile program. The Department of State will continue to use sanctions and other tools to protect our national security and ensure that U.S. exporters and U.S. financial systems cannot be abused by proliferators. And it's our hope to continue to engage instructively with the...
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail, the ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The family members of military army officers have filed a complaint with the International Crime Tribunal against 57 people, including former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, in connection with the media killing in Dhaka's Pilkhana. The complaint was filed by family members by Advocate Uday Shamir, filed yesterday, or today actually, this morning. So do you have any comment on that media killing case for Sheikh Hasina?
I've not seen that latest reporting, but I'm happy to check with the team and see if we can get anything for you. Sean, go ahead.
Wanted to see if Paul Watson, the Wayland activist, maybe this was in their bingo card for one of your last questions, but Greenland, the Danish authorities in Greenland have freed him. They refused to extradite him to Japan, which wants him. He's a U.S. citizen. Does the U.S. have any comment on this?
We don't. This is largely it seems like a matter for other jurisdictions. I'm happy to check if we have any perspective to offer, but don't have anything to share as it relates to this. In the back.
With regards to the sanctions announced against Pakistan's entities contributing to ballistic missile, had it not be better if it would have been resolved diplomatically? Do you think that these restrictions will have any kind of restricting effect on Pakistan?
So I kind of just answered that question. Look, these sanctions are in place because of our long-standing concern about Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile program. It is not meant to color the other areas of cooperation that we have between the United States and Pakistan. We expect those areas to continue to go forward. Taka, you had your hand up. Yeah.
Today, he took us 76 questions, and he said Russia is ready for negotiation and compromise with Ukraine. So how do you take that his comment?
I don't think anything. I don't really take anything or have a particular reaction. We have long said that it is up to the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government to decide what path it wants to take as it relates to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. This administration has been proud to be to unearth the kinds of assistance that we've had economically, militarily, and others to continue to support our Ukrainian partners. And our focus is doing everything we can to continue to put them in the strongest position possible. Goyle, go ahead.
It's two quick questions. One, if you want to talk about U.S. and India space delegations, what are we doing about this space agreements and missions?
Can you be a little bit more specific about what you're referring to?
There were Indian ambassador and deputy secretary. They went to Houston as far as this as a delegation for space mission or space agreements between the two countries.
Yeah, so we put a readout out about Deputy Secretary Campbell's travel to Houston. He was accompanied by Principal Deputy National Security Advisor John Feiner and Ambassador Quatra. They had some important engagements with space officials related to India, and I would just point you back to that readout.
And second one, sir, as we come to the end of the year, millions and millions of people around the globe still suffering for basics because of these two continuing ongoing wars in the Middle East and also Ukraine and Russia. So they are hoping still when these wars will end and they will have better lives ahead for them.
So that is something that we are focused increasingly on, is doing everything we can in the context of Ukraine to make sure our Ukrainian partners are in the best position possible, that they are in a continue to be in a place of strength. We have stressed that no decision about Ukraine can be made without Ukraine as part of that conversation, with that part of the table, and that will continue to guide our strategy going forward.
Thanks.
Go ahead. Yeah, you.
Thank you very much. So Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called double standard what you did with the Israel sanctions. So I have a broad question. So you sanctioned whole Georgian Interior Ministry because of undermining democracy. Meanwhile, you sanctioned Pakistan ballistic missile program, but Pakistan called is necessary for strategic defense. So at the very moment, you have a big embassy in Pakistan, and they have observations, and they overlook November 26th incidents in Pakistan. There are actors who are undermining democracy over there. They are attacking crackdowns on protesters. So categorically, you are doing things that are linked with Pakistan strategic defense. But regarding democracy, you have
This is what I really want to see. Putin's live Q&A. So we'll see what he got to say today. I'm just waiting for him to go live. I've got something for you, Ari. Let me get it. Excuse me. Puppy. I took Rooney out. The girls didn't want to go out. I took Rooney out. He did go out. Puppy one. Hi, honey. Oh, come here, come here, come here. Grandpa's gonna get you. Ow, 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 ow. She's gonna make you chase her. Wanna go outside? Wanna go outside? Wanna go outside and go pee-pee and poo-poo on the floor outside? Go to Grandpa, and I'll give you a cookie.
Wow.
What a big yawn. Oh, she's so cute.
Huh?
She's so cute.
I say wow because I don't know why. I'm listening to John Denver at the interview he made. He was an airplane, actually.
I know, I know.
But anyway,
I'll never forget that day.
he says, I said wow because he says, was kind of the beginning, he was starting to play places. He said his building hotel was more expensive than the money he made.
Wow.
I sent it to you to hear it.
All right, sweetheart. Thank you. You know how much I love John Denver. All right, sweetheart. Thank you. You know how much I love John Denver. All right, sweetheart. Thank you. Come here, Bubby. Come here, precious. My puppy Rooney. I said my puppy boy. This is my puppy boy. How are you feeling today? You okay? Oh. When is this dude gonna go live? Said 2. Why hasn't he started? Waiting for Inside Russia. 2 p.m. December 19th. Oh, come on, dude. It's 2:06. We want the tea. I gotta get Ronnie in a jacket before you take him, okay? 1 second. So take Ruby.
No, Ruby, no photo. Come on, you that's a pretty photo. I think she lost weight. You know?
She has lost weight. I've been working with her to help her physically so she can do some things she couldn't do before. She's just eating a lot better and getting a lot better treatment with us. She's so happy. Rooney. Come here, puppies. Come here, Bubby. Come here, precious. Let's get you in your pajamas. It's too cold out there for you to go.
This earlier, he says, Kiroti is so 95, $1.
I don't know. I'll have to look. John Denver was an incredible songwriter. I wouldn't put it past him to have written 9 to 5. He may have very well written that with Dolly. Working 9 to 5, working hard to make a living. Love that song. Love Dolly. Come here, Bubby. Put your head through there. Oh, 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 oh. There we go. Ooh, we gotta clip them toenails. Oh my goodness. Here you go, boobies. Where is Inside Russia? I'm just going to leave the link here for you. Oh, there you are in chat. Okay. Hey, sweetheart. You should. The 2 full ounce is only $13. That's what we use to help boost our immune system. Just stay on whole foods if you can, or at least eat what you can tolerate, sweetheart. Okay, get plenty of rest. I literally have not been sick since August 2021, and I just got like bronchitis or something. It was not COVID. It was not pneumonia. Whole foods, vitamins, supplements, those kind of things are going to keep your immune system boosted up. Making sure you know when you go out in public, if you're not on a date, wear your mask. Take your mask with you, anyways. Make sure you are sanitizing your hands. To keep some hand sanitizer on in your pocket when you're in public. Because it's just so easy to get sick now. Here you go, Bubby.
Every year, Russian President Vladimir Putin hosts a live TV event broadcasted to entire Russia. The event is called Прямая линия, or the direct line. The idea is that anyone, a Russian national or a foreigner, can call and ask Vladimir Putin any question on live TV. That's basically a gargantuan live stream chat that we here at Inside Russia do a few times every week. And that's what we're gonna do today, again, discussing my message and the direct line that Vladimir Putin just held. And today was his 21st direct line. And it was, well, I can't say it was a treat. I'll walk you through the direct line today, and I will explain why I find
I'm just watching something, so I can listen to him and listen to you.
Howdy, howdy, everyone.
Little Susie can do it.
My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. As usual, you will not find here any BS, propaganda, or lies. Instead, you will find truth, common sense, and logic, and emotions too, because I'm a human being after all.
I think you did something.
The direct line event with Vladimir Putin is an annual televised, well, I was going to say event, but it's really a show. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin answers questions from Russian citizens. This event started on December 24th, 2001, 23 years ago, and has been and was held almost every year since then. So today is the 21st event. During the direct line, Putin addresses a wide range of topics, including politics, foreign policies, current domestic events. Questions are submitted via telephone, text messages, emails, and video calls. The event is broadcasted on multiple television channels and radio stations in Russia, making it accessible
No,
to
Dolly
a
Parton
large
wrote the song
audience.
9 to 5.
The format allows Putin to present
Well,
himself
because
as directly engaging with the concerns of Russian citizens,
maybe you
bypassing
misunderstood
other
it,
government
or maybe
agencies
Dolly's
and
lying.
assemblies.
You know, look at Jack. He
This
won't
has
tell
been a
anybody that
significant
I started the
aspect
Music is
of
Sacred
Vladimir
movement.
Putin's public
You know, and
image
when they're rich and more famous than you, they'll
his
take.
political strategy. This all sounds fantastic, but despite the direct line being a live televised event, it is staged. There have been numerous reports and rumors circulating that the questions are crafted in advance, and a large team of specially selected and prepared people asks them live. There can be also questions asked by regular people. Sometimes I believe that they get through. But, you know, sometimes there are questions from audience, especially from foreign reporters who sit in front of Vladimir Putin and ask him live. But the questions are screened in advance. Well, there's no hard proof of that. People who organized staging of the direct line, they haven't come out forward yet, but I'm very sure that they will come forward and tell the truth in the future sometimes. How then we know that these rumors are true? Well, obviously judging from the nature of the questions that Vladimir Putin is asked. On my memory, he hasn't been asked a question that would put him into a spot or in would make him feel uncomfortable. I believe the last questions that I said, wow, and I was surprised about, I think they came in 2012. And there weren't many of them, just a few. So, again, on my memory, he hasn't been asked a question that would put him on a spot. And there are a lot of questions that can these days. Why the direct line events are important then? Because Vladimir Putin lets everyone know his position on various issues and policies. He kind of gives out an idea to the public of a direction for Russia for following year. And today's direct line was also important. There are plenty of questions that Putin has to answer Russians right now, such as the war, the economy, why so many people have been killed, the future steps of the country will be taking and making. And some of that was partially answered or at least hinted to us. And I want to share the main points that Putin made today. I'll give you my take on them. The entire event is very long. Well, was very long, 4.45 hours, 4.5 hours, and fairly boring. This is the first direct line event that I didn't learn anything new. But then, nevertheless, I find it important. So what I'll do is I'll give you the most important questions and takes or statements that Vladimir Putin did, and I will put my commentaries. One thing I'll tell you in advance before jumping into letting you know is that I heard a lot of heresies today. One thing I'll start with. Vladimir Putin was actually looking good at this event. There were lots of rumors circulating about the poor health, decline in health, and so forth. Well, I tell you, he looked good and he was full of energy. And 4.5-hour live event is very physically and mentally demanding and challenging. I know I have staged live streams that were 4.5, 5, even 6 hours. And I tell you, at the end of such event, you feel exhausted. Heck, 2 hours, hour and a half, I usually feel very tired at the end of every single event, my event, live stream that I do every single day. 4.5 hours in front of the entire country, basically the world. Well, Putin pulled it off. He was full of energy. He was feeling fine, or so it looked like. So much goes for the rumors of his decline in health. Of course, there's a question, was it really Putin? Nah, I don't know how to answer that. I really don't. I don't think that anyone except for the very close circle of Vladimir Putin can answer. So therefore, I won't even discuss it. So let me jump to the points. The first, question was from the presenter, the reporter who was hosting. And basically, something like this was said. It seems like the world has gone crazy or is going crazy. How does Russia manage to hold on? And Vladimir Putin tried to make a joke. He kind of jokingly replied that basically when it's not scary, it's boring. And everyone complains because it's boring. And when things turn turbulent and it's not boring, as right now, and even bullets go by, then people start complaining about that. So now I'll give you a few points that I found very important. Number one, Vladimir Putin usually starts his direct line events from talking about Russian economy. And this time he surprised me. He started with Russian economy, but not in a way that would be expected from him, telling the truth. But he said that Russian economy this year has grown by 3.9%. Well, 2 weeks left, but 3.9% growth, economic growth, 3.9%. Now, anyone who knows a thing or two about Russia will tell you right away that this is kind of crazy because Russia is going through an extremely turbulent period in its time, in its history. It has lost the bread maker it was relying on for the past 50 years. The exports of natural gas and oil, well, not completely lost, but taken a huge hit. Russian expenses of Russian economy have tripled for the defense, or offense, I should say. And there's a record number of loans taken out, bankruptcies, defaults, and this is a mess. I've been talking about it for the past year, and Vladimir Putin says it's 3.9%. In the good years, in the last 8 years before the war, Russian economy grew by about 1%. With selling, exporting natural gas and oil, without huge military expenses, with fairly large revenues, selling everything abroad, it grew by 1% year after year and after year. And now, going through such turbulent time, it grows by 3.9%. You know how it's called, my friends? Heresy. Russian economy is not growing. The only part that has somewhat grown is the military-industrial complex, the enterprises and factories that produce death. They have been pumped with taxpayers' money in the last 2 years. These enterprises used to work 1 shift a day in the past, but now most of them work 3 shifts a day. They pump out, they produce as much death as they can. The missiles, ammo, tanks, planes, okay? There's overall growth shown in the economy because of 2 things. First is there has been incredible growth, some experts say up to 40%, of the military-industrial complex that doesn't produce consumer goods, produces death that basically has nothing valuable to add to Russian economy, okay? That's number 1. And number 2, Russian economy has shown overall growth because of high inflation. Real life inflation is estimated between 26 and 30%. 26 and 30%. Now put yourself into the shoes of a Russian who lives just a regular person who has a regular job. If you saw this year your prices jumped by 30%, what would you say? The price is growing up by 30% in the last, about 18 months. The costs of everything have increased. The Russian ruble is devalued. It lost over 50% of its value since late 2022. Therefore, all imports paid for in dollars cost over 50% more now. And that's just the currency difference, besides other factors. The rest of the economy, except for the military-industrial complex, the civic economy, is in recession. And that is not me saying, friends. It is Elvira Nabiulina, the head of Russia's central bank. She says that in the in a few press conferences. She changed her tone in July. She downgraded prognosis for Russian economy. And basically now she kind of tells the truth what's going on. It's out there. Some people ask me for the links. It's out there to see at the website of Russian Central Bank. Please go and check out for yourself. Available for the public to see. The Russian economy is landsliding. Vladimir Putin bragging of the success of Russian economy is either grossly misinformed or lying to the taxpayers. What he said today is lies and heresy. Number 2. Vladimir Putin bragged of overall growth of salaries and wages of Russian people. Well, I was sitting there and watching him and listening to what he had to say, and I was thinking, who is he trying to kid? Russian people? He's telling Russian people how Russian people, started receiving, earning so much more? Yes, there has been growth in salaries and wages, but not so fast. The growth is artificial due to catastrophical decline in country's labor force. There are simply fewer people available to work. So employees have competed for available workers by raising salaries and wages. So that's your growth, But the thing is that the rate of growing salaries does not catch up with the rate of inflation. That is an artificial growth, and it's not enough even to match the rise in prices, okay? There's a growth without production, the growth in production. The growth in salaries and wages is without growth in production. And it hurts the companies a great deal, and it leads to even higher inflation, stagflation, and or recession. Any economics freshman would tell you that what's happening with the wages in Russia right now, wages and salaries, is not good. There's nothing to be bragging about. Apparently, it's good enough for Putin, and that's what he brags. Friends, this is heresy. Number 3, Vladimir Putin mentioned that Russian economy became healthier due to Western companies having left the country or, intending to leave. The very few of them left. Russian business people took over where the foreigners left. Friends, that is heresy. Large Western companies have left Russia, indeed. Almost all of them have left at this point. But there are new companies that Putin is talking about. They simply have not been created. Instead, the Russian government, Putin, at the patronage of Putin and the highest officials, stole most of former Western assets and started using them as their own. That is called theft. I'll just give you a few names. Baltica, Russia's largest brewery. It was built by a Danish company called Carlsberg. That's a very known case in Russia. I even studied it in the business school. It was stolen from the rightful owners and given to Putin's buddies. Danone, a French dairy giant, stolen from the rightful owners in Russia and given to Putin's buddies. A Swedish company called IKEA needs no introduction. The foreign owners were forced to sell it for pennies on dollar. And then there are hundreds of other examples. So Putin saying Western companies leaving Russia is good and they've been replaced by Russian companies and Russian business people is heresy. Number 4, Putin's also said that Russian army is in great shape. Where do I even start? I feel like I repeat myself, Ukrainian forces have entered and occupied a decent size of Russian province, and that happened in early August 6th. Now it's December 19th. It's been over 4 months. And the Ukrainian troops are still there in Kursk province, and there have been numerous attempts and numerous orders from Vladimir Putin to push the Ukrainians back into Ukraine. 4.5 months. I guess that shows what great of a shape Russian army is in. Now, Russian army has been conducting an offensive in Ukraine, and it's been doing that for months and months and months, and they have moved just a few kilometers further into Ukrainian territory. That shows you what a great shape Russian army is. And then there are numerous reports from just soldiers recording videos stating what a poor shape their life in the army is. They have to buy food themselves. They have to buy ammo, clothing. There are hundreds, if not thousands, volunteers in Russia who go around, knock on people's doors, and ask to get some money to buy things for Russian soldiers. When I hear that, my first question is like, okay, but the taxpayers have already paid for everything that you're asking for. Where did the taxpayers' money go to? Well, fortunately, I don't have this unpleasure of receiving this telephone calls or knocking on my door, but they literally do that in Russia, okay? And that just shows you what a great shape Russian army is at. Imagine the US Army having, you know, stationed in Afghanistan or Iraq, and then the volunteers in the United States walking around and raising money to buy food for the American army, you know. That's the same thing is happening in Russia, you know. So there have been a flood of reports from semi-government agents, Z reporters operating in the front lines. They're not happy. Some of them are telling the truth. Some of them are getting shut down by the Russian government, and some of them even getting arrested. But they are also a source of truth. And anyone understands that Russian army is not in a great shape. Moreover, recently a high-ranked general, Gennady Anashkin, was fired from his position of the commander of the South Group of Armies in Ukraine. The fellow who was in charge of Russia's war, there are two groups of armies, the East and the South, okay? So one of them was fired for lying. That is an official explanation for supplying fake information to the higher command. He lied of the advancements of Russian army. You know, he lied of current state of the Russian army. And it just happened in November. And then Vladimir Putin comes out and tells all the Russians on TV that Russian army is in great shape. It's a heresy. Number 5. Vladimir Putin said that Russia doesn't have any prerequisites for the peace negotiations with Ukraine. And that is absolute heresy. He contradicted himself. On the 14th of June, he said, I quote, "There are two prerequisites for the start of the peace negotiations with Ukraine. First is all Ukrainian troops must be removed from the annexed territories of Ukraine, you know, where Russia is claiming their own right now. And the second prerequisite, the Ukrainians must formally inform Russia that Ukraine has no intention to join NATO. As soon as that is achieved, we will start peace negotiations immediately." That's Vladimir Putin said that himself. And now he's saying that there are no prerequisites for peaceful negotiations. It is very hard to take Vladimir Putin seriously, you know. He makes two completely opposite statements 6 months apart. He lied. He just admitted that himself. He lied either on the June 14th or today. That's how logic works, okay? You can't say two absolutely opposite things and claim they're both truth. People, what's going on? Sorry,
Oh, it's
sometimes
dripping on
I
the carpet,
tend to get a bit emotional.
Yeah. Please get it out of here.
So he made contradictory statements.
I need one more thing to
Who
claim.
in the right mind would believe Vladimir Putin? You know, in Iran, they say, I am the master of my word. I give my word, and then I can take it back anytime because I am the master of my word. Well, Vladimir Putin is the master of his word. The Iranian style. Number 6,
I'm doing good,
Vladimir
sweetheart.
Putin said that there are currently over 40,000 international sanctions of different kinds have been placed upon Russia. That is a complete heresy and lie, and that is proven by Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister. In September of this year, Lavrov publicly announced that all Russians, you know, he made a public statement. He announced that they were currently 21,000 around 21,000 international sanctions. Not 40,000. Lies and heresy. More lies and heresy. Number 7. This is a very painful, well, it's all painful, but Mariupol is incredibly painful. According to Putin, around 300,000 Ukrainians have returned to live in Mariupol. By his own words, before the war, there were around 470 million Ukrainians living in Mariupol. Now, we know a great deal about Mariupol, how it was razed by Russia. Literally, there was war came to Mariupol. You know, most buildings are destroyed. And yes, the Russians are building new apartment blocks, but that's just a little drop in an ocean. I'm just wondering, where do these 300,000 Ukrainians who lived in Mariupol, who have returned to Mariupol, where do they live? Do they live in the tents on the streets? I don't think it's heresy. I think it's just very low. Before jumping to the next point, I'd like to thank everyone. I do that every single time that I live stream or do a video, go in front of camera, because it's very important for me. I acknowledge how much support I have received from you, and I am very grateful for that. Thank you. Thank you for watching this right now. Thank you for liking it. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sending me emails with words of encouragement. Some people offer help if I ever move to their countries to stay with them. You know, that is so touching. Some people offer help to buy clothing to my kids. Thank you so much. Thank you for buying me coffees at buymecoffee.com. Thank you for Patreon. Becoming patrons. Thank you for PayPal. Thank you for all your prayers and for your love. I feel that I receive so much more than I give. And I promise you that I will continue doing what I've been doing, no matter if I'm demonetized, monetized, or, you know, it doesn't matter. I am always here. And if Google hasn't paid me a penny in the last 4 months, and, you know, I still do it because I find it very important. So thank you so much for all your support. Now, moving to the next point. That was a funny moment, you know. There was a little, how do I call it, a skirmish, perhaps an exchange between Vladimir Putin and a reporter from Tatarstan. And she called him, and she had not even a question, but she had a request. She talked about people who took out mortgage and never got the apartments. Basically, there's a scam in Russia that you invest into construction of apartment block way before it in advance, way before it is constructed and commenced. And that's just cheaper because, you know, you freeze your money for some time, and the developer just takes your money and builds, using your money, builds your housing, okay? And what happens, a lot of developers scam people. They take the money, but they never finish apartments, and then they declare bankruptcy, disappear, run with the money. I mean, that's been a problem for the past 20 years. And the Russian government has been trying to introduce tools of securitization of this industry, but it's still going on in large numbers. And then she, you know, asked Putin to help out those who basically invested money and were left without housing. And Putin tried to explain that reporter that it's simply impossible. You know, he said that there is a special escrow accounts exist in Russian banks. And I quote, he said, "I don't understand what you're talking about. It's simply impossible what you're saying." Well, it is possible. It is possible. Russians have been, and that's a big problem for a lot of people. But what Putin answered is heresy, because Putin himself signed a federal law creating protective escrow accounts for those who invest into housing construction, and the law will take effect on March 1st, 2024, and perhaps after March 1st, it's going to be much more secured, but not right now. Yet, he doesn't even understand what the reporter is telling him. So it turns out that Putin signs laws without reading them, because he doesn't know about this law, escrow accounts, or perhaps it's just not him who signs the federal laws. Something to think about. Number 9, there was a question about the shortages of young people and generally people in rural areas. Not enough people in agriculture, not enough farmers. And a person asked, what should we do to attract them? Well, Putin started telling from a big distance, and he turned that question into bragging. He bragged of large agricultural exports and high yields that are currently a feature of Russian agriculture industry. He said, I quote, "Everything is growing. Rural work, work in farming and in agriculture in the rural areas is becoming more and more interesting. This is an industry and it requires highly educated specialists. That is very interesting, and we need to talk about it not only at events of this kind once a year, but constantly. Putin promised that the state will do everything necessary." Oh boy, where do I start? That's a heresy of a grand scale. Gosh. You know what happened in 2022, in late 2022? He declared mobilization. And Moscow was spared. Very few people were mobilized from Moscow because the government didn't want to agitate the Muscovites. It's the capital, that's a large population, and also St. Petersburg was kind of spared, and the large cities. But the areas that weren't spared from mobilization, that were hit the hardest, were rural areas. Farmers were forced to get mobilized. Basically, they weeded out agriculture of able men. They have, I can't say they've destroyed, but they have a huge hit. And Vladimir Putin is the one who ordered the whole thing. And now he says that the government promises that the government will do everything it can necessary to attract young people back to live in rural areas, to do farming, to grow things. Russian agriculture is in big trouble. I made a live stream a couple days ago explaining, giving you facts and figures and numbers. And Vladimir Putin bragging about the state of Russian agriculture is heresy. Now, I'm done with the points. I would like to just tell you a little bit about the questions and answers type of thing. As what I've told you before was the main points. But now there have been interesting questions I'd like to mention. Putin wished well to all Russians. I quote, "We are talking right now on the eve of the very bright holidays of the New Year and Christmas. When I meet with the representatives of different religions, I ask, when people communicate with you at everyday level, what do they talk about? What do they regret? An answer is this: people say that they pay too little attention to their children. So I would like to wish that people would pay more attention to their loved ones." I unquote. Nice. How about not taking the loved ones and sending them to die in Ukraine or to kill Ukrainians? Because the Ukrainians who are fighting on the other side, they are also loved ones. They also have children. They also have wives and mothers and fathers. I have not yet heard once from Russian people residing in Russia that Ukrainians, they consider Ukrainians same as theirs. I've heard it plenty of times here in Uzbekistan, in other countries abroad, from the Russians who have left, but not from Russians who still reside. I don't think they consider Ukrainians people any longer. They don't give this thought, they don't have this thought that the Ukrainians can have loved ones too, and certainly not Vladimir Putin. Because if he really wanted to wish Russian people to pay more attention to the loved ones, he would have made a decision to stop the war. Before the last a couple questions, I would like to remind you that, in general, if you want to stay on top of things, of what's happening inside Russia, you have to pay attention to it. You have to spend a great deal of resources and time investigating, zeroing in what's happening. You got to put events in Russia under a microscope. You have to keep lots of facts and lots of news inside your head. I'm doing that. And I am offering to those who want to stay on top of things in Russia, I'm offering an easy way. I carefully select the news that I find important and I find that matter, and I make them available to patrons of Inside Russia, along with my commentaries and analysis. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's either commentaries or analysis. I feel it helps a lot to stay on top of things if you want to learn Russia, if you want to see the changes, the transformation that Russia is going through, because the biggest thing about my country is the transformation. It's transforming from, just a normal country in the past to something that I sometimes even scared to look at. So I think it's important to know what's happening. Patrons of Inside Russia, they know. Every day, 9 news, 54 news a week. We take Sunday off. So if you want to stay on top of things, didn't know where to look for, well, now you know. Sign up. I'm going to put the link down below after the end of the stream, and enjoy all the information you need to have. Now, a couple more things. Putin was asked, what does Russia mean to you? And this is a question I would ask Putin. And I really would like him to give me and everyone an honest answer. Well, the answer he gave this time is, for me, Russia is like a family. What kind of family do you treat like that? What kind of family do you destroy the future of? What kind of family that you send your family members, your loved ones, to go kill others and get killed in the process. And the count is in what, hundreds of thousands. What kind of family is that? What kind of family man Vladimir Putin is? I really would like to take a closer look at his real family, his wife or wives and children, and just for the sake of interest, to understand that man. For me, Russia is like a family, he said. I don't want a family like that. The next question was interesting. It came from a reporter from China in Russia, one of the Chinese newspapers, and he asked, is the Kremlin ready to stop the fire in Ukraine? The whole world is tired of the Ukrainian crisis. No one is asking anything. Just to stop where they're standing right now. Just stop at one point. That's what the Chinese reporter said. Can you do that? The answer was from Vladimir Putin was no. I quote, such truce period would give Ukrainians and Ukraine an opportunity to train the military and re-equip the armed forces. We don't need truce, but we need peace. Well, I'm afraid that's what Vladimir Putin wants. We'll see that soon because something big is coming. The last question, and this question kind of was a little revelation to me. That's something I did not expect for Vladimir Putin. I didn't expect to hear it. I knew that, I guessed that there's something like that deep inside Vladimir Putin's head, but he just confirmed it. So that question came from a BBC reporter from BBC News. 25 years ago, Boris Yeltsin resigned, and he called you to take care of Russia. Do you think that you have cared for Russia? What it looks from afar is pretty bad. Significant losses in so-called SVO, special military operation. I can't believe that the reporter actually didn't say the war, but it's BBC News. So the significant losses in the so-called SVO that you declared, Ukrainian soldiers occupying a part of Kursk province, NATO has expanded, demographic problems, economic problems. Do you think you have cared for Russia? Yes, Putin said. I saved it. And that was the most important answer in the entire direct line. I saved it. He saved Russia. I don't know what I need to do. Laugh or cry. He said, I have done everything to ensure that Russia is an independent power that can make decisions in its own interests. Unquote. He added that Yeltsin was favorably received by Western leaders as long as he didn't do much in the interest of the country. Honestly, I understand Putin better now. Not only he secretly thinks that he has, helped Russia, he openly brags about it. He tells the entire world that he is the savior of Russia, the mighty emperor, the strong man who has kept Russia independent, sovereign. He's talked about sovereign. He's been talking about sovereignty of Russia. What is being sovereign? I wonder. How Russia makes decisions in its own interests. Losing the bread makers, exports of natural gas and oil, is that in Russia's interests? Impoverishment of Russian regular people, millions, hundreds, tens of millions of people, impoverishment of retirees. Is that in Russia's interests? Russia being a pariah, not just by the West, by many other countries that are not part of the West, being considered a pariah. Is that in Russia's interest? He is, I can't say that he's delusional. I think he believes. He truly believes that he has done all of that in Russia's interest. He saved Russia. Я ее сохранил. I saved it. And you know what? He said that in front of 140 million Russian people. And every single one of those Russian people ate it, swallowed it, chewed it, and swallowed it. Why? If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, because I am hurting. I don't understand. Vladimir Putin or any other person can try to do and say anything they want to, but how can Russian people give up the control of their lives? Complete control of their lives, and just listen to a strongman sitting telling them from the TV that he saved their country, and the country is simply falling apart, and they know it because it has gone down bad to the very, very ground where Russian people are. That is absolutely amazing to me. Summing up Putin's 4.5 hours, it was sad madness. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd like to invite you to the live stream chat. We don't have much time, about 15-20 minutes, and I will try to answer your questions. So please, it'll be my honor if you continue in the live stream chat. Thank you. We have 5,100 people watching, which is fantastic. It's a small stadium. I'm very honored, and I'd like to thank you again for coming and giving me a chance. You know, before I start, it's the weirdest thing. All my life, I thought that the biggest problems that I faced as Konstantin, you know, just as father, as husband, was my own well-being. I had to work hard. I had to be honest. I had to learn constantly of things. I had to get experience. And that would make my life better. You know, I'd make more money. I'd get better reputation. I'd get, you know, better attitude from other people, things like that. But now, in the last 3 years, my life has completely changed. It's something absolutely different. I'm seeing my countries falling apart in front of me. And the biggest question is what to do with that, how to help it, how to save it, how to restore it, perhaps, how to change the direction it's going. And my personal problems, not problems, you know, but struggles, my path, personal path of my previous life seems so small and insignificant, you know. Anyway, thank you for coming. I was just thinking aloud. Thank you for coming. It's my best, most favorite part of any stream, because when I sit in front of a camera and speak, that's one thing, and then I turn the live stream chat on, and that just explodes with real people, with you. That's just warms my heart. Thank you so much. If you're here for the first time, I would like to inform you that Inside Russia is the best community on the internet, and it is so because of the moderation team. The best moderators you can ever find, see, or have on the internet: the Lorna, Mami K, Bob S, Harry Potter, Amir Fazat, and Dirk. Thank you, friends, for making this community what it is. Pleasant, safe, and nice. Thank you. And thank you, the usual suspects, the pillars of Inside Russia, the patrons. Thank you for coming back, and it's fantastic to have you. I apologize for yesterday. I did not live stream. It's personal circumstances. I just physically couldn't do that. And the last thing, if you want me to see your message easier, to see your comment or question easier, please put it in all caps and put Inside Russia after @ so I see your comment or question highlighted in a large orange box. Much better for me to see, much easier. Just like Bob S. did. Thank you so much, friend. Sam the Legend K, howdy. And everyone, howdy. RC Roscoe made it 3 times in a row. Good to see you. Aaron Sonex, Andres Benz, Ferrari Guy, Terry, Ferrari Guy, long time no see. PL Demergray, same thing. Jodes Rames, Sherry Diaz Hernandez. Thank you for your hug. Thank you so much. See, this is what I mean. When I see something like that, that really helps. It just makes me feel so much better. Thank you for your support. Money is great, but your words are priceless, and your wishes and your love and the prayers. You know, I appreciate everything. Thank you so very much. By the way, there's no progress on YouTube, my demonetization. Still fighting with Google. Just crazy. Andreas Benz, howdy. Peter Wanderhoevel, great to see you. The questions, why do Russians eat this BS out of Putin's hands? That's the question that I asked at the end of the stream. I don't understand at the end of the message. I don't understand. This is the biggest mystery. Either they just don't have a clue. It's their lives that's being stolen, their future of their kids. It's not just losing experts of
I'm done
guess
watching his
and
live stream. He's not talking about Putin anymore.
Yes,
I don't
and
care about those other people's questions. Like me. So, and I got to get going. I got a lot to do. I'll be back in a little bit. I got a lot of business to take care of before tomorrow morning. Thank you everyone who came by the chat to hang out with Coffee Talk, to catch up on world news events. I appreciate it. I'll be back later tonight. Love and light bright. Kalispera.